What's good YouTube, it's your boy TSO Sage and I'm back with another video. And today's discussion is going to be about the Philadelphia 76ers, specifically on how the process didn't work at all, why I believe it actually could have possibly worked had they done one thing differently, and lastly why I believe tanking as a whole is overrated. So before we dive into it, don't forget to rate, comment, share, and subscribe for more basketball talk, and let's hop right into it. So to put frankly, for the era that it could have been done, the process fucking failed. It was an entire 4 to 5 year stretch on simply tanking, trading for draft picks, and never being good until you drafted like 5 superstars and then balled the fuck out. The logic being that at some point you're gonna hit on your draft picks, and depending on how many you hit, you will have a phenomenal team or a really good one at worst. In short, to trust the process until it's no longer needed. However, the most glaring mistake when you look back at it is the amount of big men they did draft. And not only the amount of big men, but also the lack of wing players they drafted too. Because during the process, the 76ers did the following. Drafted Michael Carter-Williams, essentially trading away Drew Holiday for Nerlens Noel and Dario Saric, drafting Joel Embiid, trading away Michael Carter-Williams, drafting Jahlil Okafor, and of course drafting Ben Simmons. The only wing they ended up trading for was Nick Stauskas, and they drafted Tony Wroten, I guess, but I mean, you get the memo. So they already drafted with the mindset of drafting best player, and while I do agree with that, at some point you are being toxic about it. Because quite frankly, considering their skill sets, if Nerlens Noel, Jahlil Okafor, and Joel Embiid were all good, what was that team even going to do? Furthermore, how the hell would they play with Ben Simmons, which is my next point. They did end up hitting on high-end talent with Embiid and Simmons, but they drafted contrasting talents consistently. Nerlens and Okafor literally couldn't play together. Nerlens and Embiid literally couldn't play together. Okafor and Embiid were solid, but not that good, and considering Jahlil Okafor is a bust, obviously he packed it up. And of course I know what you're thinking, what about Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid? Well, quite frankly, no, they're not that dominant. Because if they were this duo that fits together, plays really well, and are simply the elite talents that everyone say they are, they would blow past the East easily. The only exception being the greatness of Giannis Antetokounmpo, but considering Joel Embiid is one of the best people in the world to guard Giannis, hell no. Now, I'm not denying the latent ability that Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons have. However, and I hope if you're watching this video you know this, but they do not play well together. And one thing I am emphatically disappointed in Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons is their lack of growth ever since entering the league. Now, a lot of people will blame Brett Brown or the staff, and it's true, if they had a more disciplined, strict staff, maybe they'd be far better players than we see today. Now, I'm not going as far as to consider them uncoachable, but I simply don't think that's what happened in Philadelphia. I think there's only a limited amount of people in this world, and yes, it is the 76ers job to get those people. They are held accountable, but most of the blame has to go to Embiid and Simmons themselves, as they came into the league and always gave off this attitude since that they were the shit, that they already made their mark on the NBA. Obviously, there's a level of hyperbole, as of course he's developed over time, but what exactly are the differences between rookie Joel Embiid and Embiid today? Same exact question applies to Ben Simmons, because outside of literal human health and conditioning, I don't see much. In fact, they still have the exact same complaints and weaknesses about their game ever since entering the league. For Joel Embiid, he's still lazy on offense and defense at times, and he settles for way too much than he could do. Rather than getting physical, he'll shoot a step back three or some dumb shit like that. And do I really need to sit here and talk about Ben Simmons' literal refusal to learn how to shoot the ball? It's one thing if he was built like Shaq, or if he had the mentality of a Shaq to use his genetics to his advantage and score regardless. A guy in Milwaukee to that extent is literally doing it, but at least that guy is learning how to shoot too. Now, you don't even have his genetics, and you're just simply not learning how to shoot. In fact, you're refusing to shoot the ball. Again, outside of literal conditioning, Ben Simmons is the exact same player, to be honest with you. But despite all of this, they think they arrive. They think of themselves as top 10 talents, etc., so they simply don't grow or evolve their game. This is what I believe to be the biggest factor in the process is failure, as they're making it hard for them to even play with each other. It literally comes off as they don't even like each other, to be quite honest. However, the process, despite all of these flaws, despite Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, could have actually worked had a couple of things changed. As much as I hate to admit it, if they had kept tanking, it may be a whole different ballgame. Because Sam Hinkie was 1000% going to continue tanking. He did not believe that Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons were enough. And one thing I actually do like about Sam Hinkie is his aspirations to not only win a championship, but to be a dynasty. Now, I believe he aimed a little bit too narrow-sighted at that point guard center duo, as that's clearly what he was going for. But as far as assessing talent, I won't even begin to judge him. He did get 2 perennial all-stars out of the 5 early draft picks he had. The process could have worked if it has simply continued. Another way the process could have worked is simply having a more concrete plan. Because while again I do believe at some point when your pick is high enough you do just draft the best player and worry about the issues later, at some point you are indeed constructing a team, and drafting 3 centers in a modern modern era was not exactly the best look. If the 76ers had drafted schematically, like let's say they wanted to run an ultimate pick and roll and drafted players that fit that scheme, then I think they could actually draft a more complementing talent. And lastly, in a more recently fixed problem, but they had a coach that they tanked with coaching their playoff roster. Now, Brett Brown is a good coach. I'm not saying he's a bad one by any means, but for the love of God, that was your coach that was a part of the process. When you have a coach that sits there during a losing process, he develops a losing mentality or a losing locker room, even if he himself is actually a winner or a great coach. Even the great Phil Jackson or Greg Popovich in that process would have failed, and they probably would have left a lot earlier. You can't have the same guy who was a part of a losing culture grasp the locker room full of young talent and tell them, okay, now we're actually going to win. Nobody's that childish. And granted, Phil Jackson was money hungry like shit for the Knicks. You wouldn't catch Phil Jackson or Greg Popovich in terms of their coaching career ever setting foot in the process. Even if the team around them sucked, they wouldn't start flagrantly tanking. They would never do that. Well, I ain't gonna lie, maybe Phil, because that shit he did to the Knicks was kind of wild. But lastly, and the most exciting part of the video to you guys, what the hell do they do now? As much as we want to live in hypotheticals, things are the way they are. Embiid and Simmons are on the same team, surrounded by no cap whatsoever and players who are simply underperforming. They traded away their best shot at winning in Jimmy Butler for quite literal locker room issues. And now you have two young stars on the team who don't play well together and quite honestly give off the mystique they're done with the Philadelphia 76ers as an entire unit, as a franchise. Now apparently due to the firing of Brett Brown, they're not trying to trade any all-stars. I don't know what it is about Elton Brand and the 76ers, but I need them to wake up and realize that talent does not win everything. Talent is superior in basketball, but it is not everything. The process, or even just the Embiid and Simmons thing, did not work. But rather than accepting it, Elton Brand wants to continue being this mediocre second round, first round exit team. Sometimes you need to take a step back to take a step forward. I am not saying tank by any means. You can trade Embiid and Simmons and still have a good team, let alone if you just trade one of them. If you were just to trade one, I must be honest, I think the answer is clearly keep Ben Simmons, trade Joel Embiid. It's not that Embiid isn't better than Ben Simmons, but considering we literally just saw him get swept by the Celtics, who yes, they're a good team, but like the playoffs, they will also be playing other good teams in the future. Joel Embiid did not look good. His numbers may say otherwise. I'm not going to check them. I don't really care about him, to be honest, but he did not look good in that series to me. And I also believe that a team built around Ben Simmons has a higher ceiling, let alone Ben Simmons himself if you get him in a growth mindset. However, embrace yourselves for this one. I'm not even trolling. This isn't just a hot take for views, as again, my channel is consistent. I mean everything I say. If I'm the 76ers, I'm highly considering getting rid of both Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. I'm not going to definitively say that's the best thing they should do, but Philadelphia simply needs a culture reset in that locker room, in that organization, big time. The 76ers are complacent with being okay or even really good, but I simply don't look at Embiid or Simmons and think greatness. I just simply do not. It is a mental blockage in their head. They just do not improve their game, and if a player doesn't want to improve their game, I don't think there's putting people around him to make him want to. I think he just simply doesn't have it in him. And due to their latent ability and talent, they can go to a winning team and win championships if the team is good enough, especially if they're like the second or even the third best player on those new teams. But in terms of right now and in the future, I don't want Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons to lead my basketball team, considering how they acted in these past couple of years. The lack of maturity and the amount of laziness is insane between these two. You would think after Kawhi sent them home the way they sent home that they would be major different talents. Ben Simmons would actually add a mid-range or be far more aggressive attacking the rim or something. Something major would change with them. But in fact, nothing has changed whatsoever, and the 76ers as a unit look worse. And again, I won't say definitively move both, because it is a good possibility that it was Brett Brown and they simply didn't respect him. It's possible. I don't know what's personally said in that locker room, and I don't know exactly what's going on in practice and development and etc. But what I do know is you can get a lot for either of them, let alone both. And you don't exactly have to settle for just draft capital. You can get amazing or even really good players to start for your team. And considering the contracts of Tobias Harris and Al Horford, yeah, you're not exactly going to sign anybody. The best way they can acquire talent now is via trade or via draft. And if you could do two separate trades that get you like 3 to 4 starters and a bunch of draft capital, I think you come out on top. Or even keep one. However, at this point, it's flagrant to me that you're just keeping talent for the sake of talent. It does not work. I am holding Embiid and Simmons accountable for it not working. But if the Sixers keep continuing to try to force this to actually work, it will only impair their future future even further. If nobody in that organization is willing to make a change, nothing around that organization is going to change around them. I'm rooting for the 76ers to be a good franchise, but they need to do something now before it is simply too late. But that's going to do it for today's video, and hopefully if you made it to the end, you enjoyed the video that you watched. And if you did enjoy the video, let me know by leaving a like. Also, if you consistently watch my content, don't forget to subscribe, or if you're investing in my content, because I be putting that work in, motherfucker, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me as well. And lastly, leave a comment. I enjoyed talking to you guys. I'm uploading every day on my channel until we hit 100 subs, and I'm taking a 1-day break and I'm going right back at it. But yeah, this is my one video for today, so I'm finna head out. Again, don't forget to rate, comment, share, subscribe, and it's been your boy TSO Sage, and I'm gonna see you tomorrow. Thank you for your time.